Hello, Mr. Sudhanshu Mani. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking your time off to give us this interview.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Mr. Mani, you've had a very long and illustrious career with railways that's spanning well over 3 decades, if I have that right. And in this period of time, you would have witnessed a myriad of changes in the railway space, including infrastructure modernization, improvement of passenger amenities. So, how do you look back at the way the railway infrastructure has developed, passenger amenities have improved, and what kind of an impact would that really have on the overall traffic volumes?
Okay. Yeah, you're right. So there have been massive changes in the way railways carry its passengers, but a lot still needs to be done. To answer your question, there have been changes, but to my mind, much more has to be done.
All right.
And since this interview is somewhat related with media and advertising, let me tell you that the trend world over, except some countries like USA, is very clear that train travel, the cleanest mode of transport, is here to stay. And to help that, Indian Railways have to make improvements first for the common man. It's a much abused way of looking at things because fares are low and people think that since they don't pay, they don't need to travel in more comfort. I would look at it a little differently. An aspirational, resurgent India 10 to 15 years from now cannot have its common man traveling in trains like the way a large part they do today. If I can say packed like sardines. It may look far-fetched, but I do believe that comfort for every common man of India in air-conditioned comfort can be provided with certain imaginative changes, and that planning has to start now. Which means we should stop making any non-AC coaches. We should make AC coaches perhaps more cramped than they are today. Like there is AC economy coach which has 83 berths. I'll go farther and say take it to 100 or a little bit more, but provide them air-conditioned comfort and certain other minimum comforts. Even if you run some non-AC trains, maybe one or two per route for, say, carrying migrant laborers and so on, ensure that everyone gets a seat. And that's also possible. We must believe that it's possible and then work for it. That's one. As for the higher end passengers, because there is an obvious competition with air travel, that's also possible. And you see, trains like Train 18, Vande Bharat Express have proved where passengers do pay 15-20% higher tariff and prefer it to air travel because there is a commensurate, not only the speed, it cuts down travel time, there is commensurate passenger amenities in the train. So we have to aim for both, and the planning for that should start now. So in 10 years, I would say train travel would be absolutely be there and compete with air travel.
Wonderful. Mr. Mani, pre-pandemic, if the data suggests that passenger traffic volume had, reached the 8 billion mark, which is like the population of the world. And there have been reports of railways planning to take the passenger volume to about 12 billion by 2030. So do you think the current trajectory of modernization and improvement of amenities are really going to help railways achieve that target?
Right. So first I get back to what I said earlier. You have to provide comfort to the passengers in all classes. And for that, as well as to cut down travel time, there is much more massive infrastructural upgradation required in railways than you would on coaches. Because the civil infrastructure, the track needs much more money. The good sign is that the present government, in spite of precarious railway finances, they have decided that they would invest in railways in a big way. In fact, in last 7, 8 years, the investment in railways has gone up by 4 to 5 times. And the latest budget has 2.45 lakh crores to be invested in this year in railways. So the path is all set. And I believe if the things move the way they are doing, uh, railways would certainly carry 12 billion passengers, as you mentioned, in 2030 or thereabout. My only caveat is that, as I said repeatedly, they must travel in comfort so that India reaches that, you know, the scenario that you find in developed countries.
Fantastic. Mr. Mani, you have underlined the importance of providing very comfortable travel to the passengers, which will actually have a big impact. I do know that Train 18 project is your brainchild. And today we have Vande Bharat Express running. Uh, would you say that this train set
Yeah.
approximates to the quality of comfort and amenities that you are referring to, and whether also that will bring about different other kinds of passengers to opt for railway travel?
Yeah. Yeah. So let me begin by saying that I am reminded of a quote from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, where Portia says, if to do were as easy as to know what were good to do, chapels had been churches, and poor men's cottages, princesses' palaces. So our problem has been that we know what to do, but complex problems, which look complex, need simple solution, and it's not the other way around. What we managed to do with Train 18 was harness the available energy and expertise, and the train became a changer, and which has germinated the current level of announcements of huge number of speedier trains with modern amenities. So it was not perfect because it was done in a hurry to prove a point, but it was, as the first attempt to deliver a modern train, it did catch the imagination of the country, and therefore it emerged as a trendsetter. As I said earlier, it is well patronized and remunerative for IR in spite of higher fares. And that tells us that passengers are willing to pay more for commensurate service. And that is, uh, in fact, that's what opens up additional commercial opportunities,
Okay.
including advertising. And it is for IR to and the stakeholders in the domain to exploit it for a win-win for all passengers, Indian Railways, advertisers, media operators, and everyone.
All right. That's very interesting. In fact, I was about to ask you about the commercial opportunities, but you have referred to it. Let me come to the station modernization. There's been a big project to redevelop stations, as also come up with greenfield projects. Very recently, the stations, Vishweshwaraya station has been inaugurated in Bangalore. All of these are pointing to a completely a new phase of station development. There are often references to these stations being like airports. Do you think that kind of an ambience, this kind of commercial development, all that could also be a game changer for the advertising industry to
Yeah.
come and actually not only be advertisers, but perhaps play a part in the project development itself? Do you think that kind of a scope exists?
Absolutely. So, you see, stations and trains are married to each other
Right.
because both need each other to function. But station improvement has not kept pace with the changing face of the country. I'm not talking about trains, I'm talking about India as a whole. So, stations must improve to attract higher end passengers, especially, and other passengers as well, while providing basic comforts for all passengers. So, if you see in last 2 decades since we have been talking of station developments, we really have today only two or three what we would roughly call world-class stations. You would have heard of Habibganj, Gandhinagar, and now your own Bangalore's Baipanhalli station. I forget the name it has been given. But it is too little at this point. So the stress perhaps should not be so much about making it like a mall or a five-star hotel on top of it and so on, but definitely comparable to airports in terms of comfort, in terms of signages, in terms of ease of passengers to enter and exit. These things must happen. And through PPP mode, EPC mode, and so on, progress has been rather tardy. So I would say that since money is not a constraint today, it's only the mode of execution which is wanting. This has to be done with greater commitment to execute. And if it happens, there is no other way but the passenger profile to improve and change in a way that will make it definitely more attractive for advertisers and media operators and so on. Uh, I would go for as far as to say that this must happen.
Wonderful. Absolutely. We are all hoping that this will happen, especially when the railways has set a target of taking the passenger volume to 12 billion by 2030. Perhaps that will be possible only when the stations are modernized. The trains are of the kind that you are referring to, Vande Bharat Express being an example of that. Well, there's another subject that I would like to touch upon, Mr. Mani, and that is about the railway display network. RDN projects
Yeah.
were unfurled with great ambitions, or rather, the projects were talked about with great ambitions. And as you understand, the railway display network has to do with train and passenger information, and which will actually make it the ease of travel, ease of being at the stations, and all very, very good. Thus far, however, the railway display network projects have not taken off in the way that this was envisaged, mainly because, as we understand, is that these project sizes were significantly bigger than the size of the companies that were aspiring to participate in these projects. These
Yeah.
projects were put together at regional levels, put together in two packets, combining two large regions into one packet. Whereas when it comes to the participation of the advertisers, who in turn would have been part of that PPP projects, the response thus far has been at best lukewarm. So if we have to be looking at RDN success and engaging maybe not just the current advertising firms, but maybe some of the other corporate houses who may actually see these as good investment opportunities. Would you have some suggestions to actually make this project success factors go up?
Okay. Yeah. So RDN networks, as you pointed out, uh, is a very good platform for passengers to information as well as for media operators and advertisers to exploit and grow. Uh, the problem in railways, as I can see, I have limited experience when I worked as a DRM or ADRM. That's when I came into touch with these issues. As I understood, there is some kind of reluctance in policy making. Sometimes they talk of centralization. And next day they would talk of decentralization. It kills the local initiative if you go for too much centralization and large contracts. And as you pointed out, uh, these long-term contracts have not really yielded the results we should have liked to see. In my opinion, the time is to give more freedom to decentralize it to local units and give them targets if you want. And it's up to their efficiencies. It's up to them to position IR strongly, just like airport operators, and sell it strongly. What it needs is widespread awareness among the operators active in those areas, and engage with them in a win-win situation and not like as if you were dispensing favors and so on. So that mindset has to be changed both at central as well as local level. And there is a great opportunity waiting for everyone here, which must be exploited. Uh, I cannot say firmly that signs are very good, but I hope as investments into railway come into those where a railway should invest, this would be opened up to operators and it will be exploited for everyone's welfare.
Absolutely interesting. My final question to you, Mr. Mani, is there has been some discussion on privatization of trains, privatization of a number of services that are available to passengers. Now, given your vast experience in this particular space, do you think that privatization is the way forward?
Good question. So the in my opinion, the answer lies somewhere in between.
Okay.
In our country, unfortunately, privatization is always a bad word. That's very unfortunate because, and that should be addressed. You see, we talk of common man and the fare. If we privatize, the fares would go up and it will be politically suicidal and so on. Not at all. It is the government's job to look after the common man. And I told you, I mean, I have kind of laid a roadmap as to how it can be done. At the same time, as a commercial entity, like it or not, Indian Railways must exploit the possibilities of running wonderful trains. And those, having worked in government, I have no hesitation in saying that kind of service it's better left to the private sector. So don't privatize as a whole, but the higher end segment of trains must be privatized and let them compete in the market and exploit the possibilities. A move was made 2 years back, a tender was floated for a large scale introduction of private trains, but it never materialized into anything, sadly, because of certain, cussed attitude of railway bureaucrats in the railway board, where they were looking after the interest of Indian Railways, but were not empathetic to the interest of the private operators. Now there is some initiative to run, these tourist trains, but tourist trains is fine, that will fetch in business. But I would say even higher end trains where passengers are willing to say Chennai to Bangalore. If you can take them in 3 hours, it's possible, and give them the best comfort. Nobody would fly between Bangalore and Chennai. So that kind of thing has to be exploited by introduction of private trains. And as I said, it doesn't impact on your politically correct way of looking at how to ferry common man. I think that should be done. Uh, it has been abandoned, by I hope it is revived.
Fantastic. Such encouraging words. A great roadmap, I would say, for the railways coming from you. We're extremely hopeful that your suggestions and your observations will be very keenly followed by our audiences. Most of them are in the OH industry and are looking to play a very, very active part, or perhaps an instrumental role in the projects that Indian Railways would like to bring about. So many, many thanks, Mr. Mani, for your most valuable time. And I look forward to having many more conversations with you on the subject. Many thanks again.
My pleasure all the way. Thanks for having me.